Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here for our June 2026 Dementia Friendly Nevada Distinguished Speaker Series. It is a pleasure to have you all with us. I see some familiar faces and names, some new ones as well. But thank you so much for joining us. For anyone I have not had the opportunity to meet, my name is Casey Venturini, and I serve as community convener for the statewide Dementia Friendly Nevada Initiative in my role with the Dementia Engagement, Education, and Research Program, or DEAR program, in the School of Public Health at the University of Nevada, Reno. We at the DEAR program, we serve as the institutional home base of Dementia Friendly Nevada, and I'm joined by my two DEAR program colleagues here. DEAR Program Director, Dr. Jennifer Carson, and then DEAR Program Community Programs and Education Coordinator, Braslin Weissert, both members of the statewide Dementia Friendly Nevada support team. It's a pleasure to be with you all. I know we probably have many people joining us from outside of Nevada. Maybe this is even your first time learning about Dementia Friendly Nevada, so I want to share just a little bit about what it is that we do. Dementia Friendly Nevada is a statewide initiative that it really aims to cultivate communities that are respectful, educated, supportive, and inclusive of people living with dementia and their care partners. And we have 9 communities across the state that are each working at the local level to do just that, to become more dementia friendly and inclusive. These 9 community groups, we call them, are led by local co-facilitators, and I see some of our co-facilitators on the call today: Sarah Viles, Ginny Cunningham. We have a network. We have a really dedicated network of co-facilitators across the state who lead those local efforts. But each one of our local community groups is also comprised of membership, community members who step up, often volunteering their time to make a dementia-friendly and inclusive community a reality. And so I want to just extend my heartfelt thanks to everyone who has been a part of Dementia Friendly Nevada, one of the Dementia Friendly Nevada community groups. Thank you so much for being a part of this important change. Dementia Friendly Nevada also has some statewide programs that we offer online, virtually for anyone, anywhere, and this is one of those, our Distinguished Speaker Series that we host once a month. The dedicated purpose of this space is to bring high quality education that can inform the work of our Dementia Friendly Nevada community groups. And today we have an incredible presentation lined up on dignity, dementia, and changing the story by 2 wonderful people, Jessica Lou Kim and Mary Beth Wighton, who I will introduce in just a moment. I do want to let you all know that we will be having the full recording of today's presentation available on the Dementia Friendly Nevada website in the next week or so. And we will make sure to post about that on Dementia Friendly Nevada's social media. So if you aren't following us on Facebook, definitely give us a follow so that you can learn about when that recording is available. I also want to let you know that today's presentation is my favorite type, which is an interactive presentation. So there will be plenty of opportunities for you to be a part of the fun today. So get ready. Maybe find a quiet space. We always encourage you to turn on that camera so we can see your lovely faces. There'll be lots of chance for dialogue today as we work towards changing the story together in conversation. So we invite you to bring your full active participation. Otherwise, if you have questions throughout the presentation today, please feel free to put them in the chat box. I will make sure to shepherd them to Jessica and Mary Beth, either during the presentation or during a Q&A section toward the end. That's all my intro. I don't want to spend one more moment getting in between you all and our fantastic presenters today. So it is my pleasure to bring you Jessica Lou Kim and Mary Beth Wighton of JLK Consulting and Coaching Services. And Jessica, Mary Beth, I'm so excited for all that you have to offer. I will turn it over to you, Jessica, to get us started. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much, Casey, for that warm welcome. Hello, everyone. Good to see you all. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to join this session. As Casey mentioned, my name is Jessica Liu Kim. I'm a consultant, coach, and educator, and I've spent the last 25 years working in aging services, and this work is deeply personal to me. And I'm joined by my collaborator, my co-conspirator, as I call her, and dear friend, Mary Beth. Mary Beth, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks, Joss, and hello, everyone. My name's Mary Beth Wighton, and I am 59 years old, and I am living well with a diagnosis of probable behavioral frontotemporal dementia. And I was diagnosed about the age of 45. And then since then, though, I've been championing the human rights, inclusion, and voices of individuals living with dementia. Back to you, Jess. Thanks.
Thank you. And so we want to start by first thanking Dementia Friendly Nevada, in particular Jennifer and Casey, for the invitation to join us today. We hope to build on what some of the other speakers have shared in the past. And to start, though, we want to do a little bit something different. We're not going to start with a framework or a definition. We're going to start with a voice of lived experience. And what we're hoping you'll do, at least for me, I'd really like to invite you to really listen and watch and notice what this person has to say. And that person actually is Mary Beth. But before you hear the video recording of Mary Beth, what happened was she was invited to answer 3 questions. And the 3 questions are posed on the screen. Mary Beth talks about what people want, talks a little bit about her lived experience first and what would be helpful for people to know. She talks about her observations in the tours that she did in care communities to prepare for her own future. And she also shared some thoughts on why it's important that we don't segregate people living with dementia. So the video is just a short 12 minutes. I'm going to play it and then we'll invite some discussion after.
Hello, I'm Mary Beth Wighton. I'm 59 years old and I'm living well with a diagnosis of probable frontotemporal dementia that I received when I was about 46 years old. And I've been asked to address 3 questions that challenge the way society views cognitive change. Often, conversations about dementia are led by researchers or clinicians. But today, I want to lead this conversation from the perspective of lived experience. We are going to talk about the mental labor of daily life, the reality of searching for a future home, and the systemic practice of segregation that we've come to accept as safety. So my goal is to move us away from seeing dementia as a medical tragedy and towards seeing it as a fundamental human rights challenge. The first thing I need you to understand is that my life is not a tragedy waiting for a conclusion. I am living a full, complex life right now, but it is a life that requires a massive amount of unseen mental labor. So when you and I are having a conversation, you might see me as being fully with you, fully understanding you. But what you don't see is the intense concentration required just to stay present. I am constantly working to anchor myself in the moment, to catch the nuance in your voice, keep the thread of our topic, and to ignore the distractions that my brain can no longer easily filter out. This isn't a performance. It is a profound exertion of will. And by the time I finish an afternoon of social interaction, I am often physically and mentally depleted. And my need for quiet or withdrawal afterwards. It isn't the symptom of confusion. It's a necessary recovery from the sheer exhaustion of navigating a world that moves too fast for me. And I also want you to know that the hardest part of this experience isn't the change in my brain. It's the way people change when they find out about my diagnosis. There's a subtle shift that happens. People start to look at me with pity, or they stop addressing me directly and start talking to my partner. I have not lost my intellect. I've lost my processing speed. Please stop assuming I can't contribute just because I need more time. I don't need you to take over for me. I need you to create space for me. I need you to slow down, to be direct, and to understand that my frustration is often, it's a reaction to a poorly designed environment. I am navigating a world that wasn't built for my current needs, but I am still the person navigating it. Treat me with the same expectation of competence that you give anyone else. Just give me the time I need to meet you there. Learning care communities was an act of, it was intentional preparation. I wasn't there to admire the aesthetics. I was evaluating whether these places allowed for a life of agency, for a life of compliance, for a life of compliance. And so what I did was I developed a humanity checklist for these visits. I stopped smelling for floor wax and bleach because that's the sense of an institution. And I started smelling for coffee or for baking because those are the sense of a home. I looked at how staff moved through the space. Were they standing behind one of those high nursing stations that acts as a physical and a social barrier? Or were they sitting at eye level with the residents? So a nursing station is just, it's a fortification. But a chair pulled up beside someone, that's relationship. And I think the most important and striking marker for me was the keypad. To a facility, a keypad is safety. But to me, it is a symbol that a resident's world has been intentionally shrunk. I found myself asking the practical questions of a lived life. If I can't sleep at 2 o'clock in the morning, can I go down to a kitchen and make myself a cup of tea? Or am I managed by a shift schedule? If I want to feel that sun on my face, can I simply open a door and walk into a garden? Or do I have to wait for a staff member with a badge to permit my movement? Look, most of these environments, they're built on a custodial model, and that prioritizes institutional efficiency over individual liberty. Witnessing the forced passivity of residents, people sitting in hallways, waiting for a life to happen to them. And that was a stark reminder of why I do this work. So it reinforced my demand for housing that recognizes self-determination. I'm looking for a home where my identity is preserved through my choices, not a facility where my agency is surrendered at the front door. The systemic violation of rights that we've normalized under the guise of protection. I recently, literally last week, saw a Facebook with a group of FTD discussion, and these were people who were care partners. And the discussion was when a family was struggling with a loved one in the hospital. And because the person living with dementia was walking, what the system actually calls wandering, and she was reacting to her environment and what they called aggression. And the recommendation for this person was, and I quote, mental health unit. I was stunned. I literally was flabbergasted. And so I wrote, my direct response is this, and I quote, a mental health unit for dementia, question mark. Sending someone with a cognitive disability to a mental health unit is a failure of the system. It treats our natural reactions to an overwhelming world as psychiatric symptoms to be fixed, rather than as a disability that needs to be accommodated. When we label someone as aggressive for trying to leave an environment that feels restrictive and frightening, we are pathologizing the natural human reaction. Perhaps that person is simply attempting to leave a place they don't want to be. And in that same discussion, someone mentioned that their husband, who was diagnosed with behavioral FTD, this is my diagnosis, and that person was sent to a unit for electric shock therapy. And he came out, and I quote, sweet and gentle. We must be critical of a system that uses invasive interventions to achieve compliance. Is gentle a clinical success? Or is it the result of suppressing a person's ability to protest their environment? If we use medical force to stop someone from expressing distress, we haven't cared for them. We've just made them easier to manage. And this just isn't my opinion. It is about the UN, Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the CRPD. And the CRPD is a global human rights treaty, makes it clear. People with disabilities have the right to liberty, security, and freedom from cruel or degrading treatment. The UN explicitly challenges the medical model that justifies segregation and locked wards as quote unquote safety. The CRPD also tells us that being safe should never mean being incarcerated. Segregating us into locked quote unquote memory care units, it violates our right to live in the community. And we need to stop using locks and heavy sedation as a substitute for adequate staffing and thoughtful open design. We don't need memory care segregation. What we need is a society that upholds our rights to be free and integrated members of our communities. Safety is important, but it should never be bought at the price of our human rights. Thank you for allowing me to share these perspectives. My hope is the next time you hear about wandering or locked units, you don't think about safety first. You think about liberty. We are still here. We are still citizens, and we deserve a world that accommodates our needs without taking away our freedom.
Powerful, isn't it? And I want to just take this time to say thank you again to Mary Beth for sharing your perspective and your lived experience. Before we move forward, I just want to stay here for a few minutes. And on screen are a couple of questions that I'd like to invite you to respond to. First is, what did you hear that stayed with you? And feel free to type in the chat or come off mute. We'd love to hear you. As Casey said, we do want to invite you to engage with us. So feel free to type in the chat or if you'd like, come off mute and share your thoughts.
I thought that was great. Um, Actually, I feel emotional about it. Having worked with people most of my life, etc., but to include a couple of psychiatric hospitals, it is amazing what we decide is okay or normal. And all of us know, especially if it's around us or with us, when it's not, we're not treating someone with dignity. I'm in a situation now where we're part of the guide program, which I understand, is an attempt to, this is me talking, keep my wife with Alzheimer's at home. And in a way, as a way of maintaining that dignity. But your defining of what that is and what you need was so really helpful. And not just with, picking a correct facility or whatever. I guess I don't know where you live, but even in the world around me, not just for people with some sort of diagnosis, there is a great need for all of the things you just called for. So anyway, I'm really grateful.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kenneth. And I see in the chat a few responses. Corby said, everything stayed with me! Exclamation mark. So deeply moving, could cry rivers. Valerie said, don't segregate. They're family. We need to treat them with dignity and respect as they still deserve it. And Alfreda shared and Vivian shared, and please feel free to continue sharing. I know we could stay on this so much longer, and we will come back to this. But Mary Beth, do you want to talk about what we will be introducing?
Yeah. First of all, thanks, Justin. Those are truly heartfelt comments, and we'll tell you at the end how you can connect with us further if you want. But this is exactly why Jessica and I created something called Strengths Shift, and it's a way to help us change our mindset and approach to supporting people living with dementia, and that's what we want to talk and walk with you through tonight is shift change. So here is what it looks like. It's not a complicated framework, but really it's a reminder of what we already know. But we can lose sight of this under pressure. So there are 5 shifts, and you can see them on the screen there. 1, see differently. 2, highlight strengths. 3, integrate well-being. 4, foster connection. And the 5th is transform action. Tonight, we're going to go deeper into the first 3, and those are the ones we really want you to sit with. And then shifts 4 and 5, we'll just touch on briefly, but we are going to share a handout so you can see the full picture. Okay, so that first one, shift 1. And the video really played on this is see differently. When we talk about shifting from an old lens to a new lens, this isn't just academic for me. It's a reality that I live every single day. So if you look at someone through those old lens, you're focusing entirely on what has been lost or what you see has been lost. You see a collection of deficits or a behavior, quote unquote, that needs to be managed. But let me tell you how that feels from the inside. It feels incredibly isolating. When people look at you through that old lens, you are constantly corrected, you're dismissed, and you feel like you are being spoken for rather than spoken with. And so it forces you really to withdraw because you don't feel safe. But when you choose the new lens, that changes everything. New lens focuses entirely on what remains. It looks at an action. It's a problem behavior, but really it's an expression to be identified and understood. When I am met with this lens, when I experience that radical acceptance from people around me, I finally feel safe. And it's enough to relax, lower my guard, and then simply be myself. This shift is foundational. It is the catalyst that makes everything else we share, our care practices, possible. Just back to you so you can talk about how this lens shapes that very language that we use.
Yeah, this is the shift that makes everything else possible. When we look at someone through that old lens, we, as Mary Beth said, we see behavior to manage. We focus on what's lost. But when we shift to that new lens, we see expression to understand. We focus on what remains and who doesn't want that. And we all know that language has power and it matters what words we choose to use. And so it's not just about being polite or politically correct. We want people and invite people to see differently so that it can make the everything possible moving forward. And so, part of this first shift is adopting a new definition of dementia, one that comes from our colleague and friend, Dr. Alan Power. He is the Research Institute for Aging Chair in Aging and Dementia Innovation. And the new definition he offers is this: dementia is a shift in the way people perceive and experience the world around them. Dementia is a shift in the way people perceive and experience the world around them. This definition really gets away from that old lens and really opens us to what's possible, to honor the strengths and abilities and the talents and gifts that people living with dementia still have and continue to have. That one changes everything. On screen is an image of one of Al's books, Dementia Beyond Drugs, and you can easily purchase that on Amazon. Mary Beth.
So shift 2, highlight strengths. The second shift builds on that first shift. So once we're seeing things differently, we start to notice what's strong and not just what's struggling. This question on screen comes from Don Clifton, the founder of Clifton Strengths. What will happen when we think about what is right with people rather than fixating on what is wrong with them? Excuse me. Here's what we know. Strengths don't disappear with a diagnosis, they adapt. They show up differently. In someone's energy, their humor, their persistence, it's the way they connect with people, but they are still there. The question really is whether we're looking for them. Personally, I experience this again every single day. Following my own diagnosis, my core strengths, they didn't vanish, even though my doctor told me they did, but they found a new channel. My persistence and determination shifted into a drive for writing and international advocacy and collaborating our systemic healthcare reform. 3 things that I'd never done before. When people look past my cognitive changes and they highlight my resilience, they're honoring me and what is right with me, and they're not fixating on what is wrong. So I see the same adaptation in my peers living with dementia all the time. Profound relational wisdom, vibrant creativity, and adaptive problem solving that remain completely intact when given the space that it needs to be seen. When we intentionally spot these strengths, we stop treating care as a checklist of deficits to manage, and we start supporting that actual human being. Jess, I'm going to turn that back to you now so you can tell us, how do we bring this lens into daily practice?
Yeah, thanks, Mary Beth. So the first thing you can do is what we call strength spotting. And to help us see what strengths are in people, we came up with this strengths menu. And this menu was inspired and adapted from evidence-based research done by Gallup Clifton Strengths and the VI Institute on Character Strengths. And it gives 5 categories just for us to start with. You'll see the first one is relational strengths, kindness and empathy and listening and patience. The next one is creative and expressive strengths. It could include humor, curiosity, playfulness, storytelling. The next one is resilience. It includes hope and perseverance and adaptability and courage. The next one is practical wisdom. That it might include organization and problem solving, decision making. And then the last category we created was drive and development. And that means, or could include, enthusiasm, leadership, initiative, this motivation to continue learning and growing, which we all have. These categories are something that we were inspired by, as I mentioned, through the Clifton Strengths and the VI Institute on Aging. Look, these are just our categories and our words, and I want to remind you, this is just a starting point. It's an opportunity to use something like this to help you spot the natural talents, gifts within people. And every person living with dementia holds strengths. They may change or show up differently, but they remain an essential part of who they are. So this is what we would like to invite you to do. We'd like to invite you to think of someone you support or love who's living with dementia and picture them in your mind. Now, looking at the strengths menu on screen, I invite you to think, what strength do you see in them right now? Not what they used to be, what you see in them today. And when you have that, please feel free to type that in the chat.
Lots of great ones, Jess.
Yeah, keep them coming, please.
So creative and expressive, sense of humor, drive and development, storytelling, sense of humor, creative and expressive, personality, care to be included. You get it.
Resilience, yes. Humor and resilience. Love that. Always joke that I like to, well, tell jokes that aren't really that funny, but I think they're really funny. Anywho, thank you so much. That's amazing. You know, many of them actually many of you went straight to relational strengths. That tells us something, you know, and there was just so many more. I love that. Again, we're just encouraging people, inviting people to get out of that deficit mindset and start spotting strengths. Thank you for that. The next shift, Mary Beth.
So shift 2 is about finding the strengths, whereas shift 3 is now about giving them somewhere to go. So shift 3 is integrate well-being. This is where we intentionally combine strengths with what matters most to someone. And to do that, we need a picture of what does well-being look like. So we use the Eden Alternative 7 domains of well-being. You can see them on the screen. So identity, connectedness, security, autonomy, meaning, growth, and joy. These aren't aspirational. These are what every human being needs to live well. And when we know someone's strengths, we can aim those strengths at the domains that matter to the most. So that person that you were just thinking about, the ones when you were doing the chat, which of these domains could that strength support? That's what integration looks like.
All right. We have one more question that we'd like to invite you to engage with us on. So looking at those 7 domains Mary Beth just named and thinking about your own context and the people you support or the setting you work in, which domain do you support well right now? And which one might need a bit more attention? And please, we encourage you to be honest. There's no right or wrong answer here. Just drop what comes to mind in the chat. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Autonomy, connectedness, autonomy, lots of autonomies, insecurity, connectedness, growth, some more growth, identity. Yeah, thank you. All need to feel security. Yeah, thank you. That's amazing. I'm hearing so much of connectedness and security, identity. How about some joy? Who doesn't want to experience joy? Wonderful. Thank you for that. That's, again, part of this shift. Mary Beth, do you want to just quickly touch on shift 4?
Sure. So shift 4 is foster connection. So shifts 4 and 5 are what we call the horizon. We're going to touch on them briefly tonight and point you to your handout for more specific details. Shift 4 is entirely about how we show up in a relationship. And the absolute core of this shift is a deliberate move away from that power over through power to, and moving it firmly into power with. So what does that look like? It means doing with, not doing for. It means inviting rather than insisting. And it means asking questions and not making assumptions. So there's a powerful quote on the screen right now from a person living with dementia, taking from MAREP research, which is the Murray Alzheimer's Research and Education Program in Canada, here in Waterloo, Ontario. And in 2013, this is where that quote came from. And they shared, they think I can't do anything. Until they get used to me and what I can still do, many try to take over. Think about that. So that quote is exactly what power over feels like from the other side. Power with is what happens when we intentionally stop taking over. We take a step back and we start showing up right alongside someone. So in my own life and my advocacy work, I feel the difference between these two dynamics instantly. When people attempt to do for me out of an assumption that I can no longer contribute it, it creates this immediate barrier. But when a collaborator or a professional practices with that power with, by genuinely asking for my input, respecting my rhythm, and inviting me into a process as an equal partner, it changes everything. It transforms an interaction from an exercise of task management into a space of true shared human connection. Power with doesn't diminish a person. It just holds a space for who they are. When we actively choose to stand alongside someone rather than managing them, we build a foundation where genuine connection can actually live. Jess, I'm going to pass that back to you so you can talk about our final shift on the horizon.
Yeah, thank you so much. And the final shift is about action. So not big sweeping changes, small intentional steps that any one of us can take. And on screen, there's another quote from MAREP and a person living with the MAREP research in a person living with dementia. And they said, many think it's the disease that causes us to withdraw. But for many of us, we withdraw because we're not provided with meaningful opportunities that allow us to continue to experience joy, purpose, and engagement in life. Oof, that's a heavy quote. You know, withdrawal is not a symptom. Oftentimes it's a response to the environments, the social and physical environments around people living with dementia. And because of that, many people living with dementia don't have opportunities for meaningful engagement. And that's on us. And it's something we can change. And this shift is about, again, taking those small, simple, intentional steps forward. And then noticing what works, reflecting on why might that be, noticing what might not work or isn't working, and then again, adapting, adjusting, and taking what we know is helpful and trying it again. You don't have to transform everything at once. You just have to start by noticing. And this learning loop really is something that I've seen being done in practice, but Mary Beth and I also are family care partners too. And so we know that this works, but it takes trial and effort for sure. These 5 shifts that we briefly described, as Mary Beth said, they're not rocket science. They're just a curation of all the things that we have learned over our own experiences and in working with people living with dementia. And I believe Casey will be sharing a handout that's on this, but just in case, I'll type in the chat our website too, where you can grab it. And so before we close, we want to open the floor. Mary Beth, do you mind leading this part?
So we were hoping that this was going to be a great interaction session, and it already is. So let's talk. Let's talk. What would it take to bring this lens into your context? Feel free to open up or use a chat. Let's see where we go here. How about this one? What's one thing that already is working for you that you actually want to name?
I think one thing that's working really well, and I think the two of you just demonstrated this as well, is when professionals and family care partners partner with the true experts of lived experience. I think that it's really powerful advocacy. And I see that here with the two of you working together. We see it on Mondays at a program that we host called Dementia Conversations, which was developed. It was actually founded by our partner, Chuck McClatchy, who lives with Alzheimer's disease. But I think what really works is bringing people together with dementia self-advocates. And I think that people who are living with dementia have such a powerful voice, such an incredible perspective to share. And increasingly, I think the more that professionals can do what Jessica does so beautifully, which is open up spaces for the true experts of lived experience to be able to share and teach and advocate. I think that is a really important thing for professionals to do. And Jess, I continue to learn from your approach, and you've been doing this a very long time, Jess, and a lot of people would absolutely consider you the kind of ultimate authority on the topic of dementia, and yet you know how important it is to always work with experts of lived experience. And you do it in all of your work, and I think that your work is powerful because of that. And so I think that is one thing that works, and I hope that we see more of it. Genuine commitments to always working in partnership with the people who are most impacted by dementia and who are the most knowledgeable about dementia, and that is people living with it.
Well, thank you, Jennifer, for your kind words, and you said it so well. It would behoove me to think that I am the expert on dementia. I don't live with that diagnosis. And so more importantly, we should be partnering and with people living with dementia in the work that we do and ensuring that they have a seat at the table in decision making and informing what is most helpful for them. And Mary Beth, since 2012, have been pounding the pavement in many ways and advocating to ensure people living with dementia do have a seat at the table. And because of that, we've been able to humbly and gratefully change some practice and policies. We created not only this new framework that's a curation of all of those long and hard-earned lessons, but we've been able to inform the design of retirement communities. We've been designing education and supporting people living with dementia, family, and so forth. So anyways, there's so much value when we partner together.
For sure. Thank you, Jennifer. That was well said. You know, that genuine care. I see in our chat here, this is from Julie, a huge symptom of depression from any cause is withdrawal. In dementia, it happens to both the care partner and the one with diagnosis. Wow, Julie, you nailed it there. When I was diagnosed, I was diagnosed with a severe depression, and it almost blurred my diagnosis. And it took a lot of work on my end and working with professionals to help me get out of that depression. But this is a symptom, right? This when we're not engaged, either as a care partner or someone living with dementia, it depression can definitely hit. And we got to watch that one, right? What else we got here? Jesse, what do you say here? A lot of my residents, the hardest part for them in some activities, and I can't see that bottom of it. What does it say there?
A lot of my residents,
It's
the
just
hardest part
trying
for them in some activities is just trying it out. Yeah.
Yeah. You know why? I can answer. This
ahead.
is because sometimes we're just scared. You know, what happens if I forget the rule? What happens if I can't do that? I might be embarrassed. Someone might laugh at me. I don't feel like I can do it. I don't have the ability to do it. You get all these thoughts going through your head. And then what ends up happening is you basically convince yourself not to do it. And so it's providing that safety to really everyone, whether you have dementia or not, that safety that it's okay. Whatever happens, happens. No one's here to judging. But yeah, I can see where that would happen, Jesse.
I actually,
Julie,
when I do my activities with my residents, I try to actively encourage them, and I try not to. I told them no one is judging me here for what you can and cannot do. If you need help with something, I will help you. Sometimes they can't hear me. I say, hey, listen, if I'm not talking that loud, if you can't understand me,
yeah,
I will help you with that. And that definitely helps them get over it because I have trouble with things myself sometimes too, and I have a hard time asking for help because I'm used to doing things so independently. So I get where they're coming from as well.
great. You hit on a really important topic. We could do a whole other webinar on that one, but it's about hearing. And this is one of the modifiable symptoms of dementia. So the people that you're working with, how is their hearing? I actually wear hearing aids. And any of our five senses are affected by dementia. So really take a look at that person. Maybe they can't hear the instructions properly, or as this gentleman just said, maybe he hasn't spoken loud enough. So take a look at all of those things that affect our senses, and make sure that they're actually working, or that they have tools to help them work as designed.
Jessica, Mary Beth, I'll go ahead and jump in quickly. I love this first question, really encouraging us to consider what can we do to take this really inspired, uh, simple but so profound at the same time framework and to implement it into the context in which we work. And I know that many of the people who are joining us today are involved with dementia friendly and inclusive community work in some fashion. And so immediately I started thinking, well, what can dementia friendly and inclusive community groups, community efforts that are working to create more respectful, educated, supportive, inclusive communities, what can they do to take this strength shift framework and really spread it throughout the community? And I just want to reinforce what Jennifer, brought up earlier, which is I think that certainly in doing the education across community sectors that we know needs to happen in order to create environments that are genuinely inclusive, that we do that education in lockstep with people living with dementia, and that we, support and that we really approach that work as co-leaders. And what I also, I have to say, I absolutely love the simplicity of your framework. I think it helps us to really grasp it and it helps us to use it. And so it makes me think too, in really focusing on what are those core principles. What are a few words that we can take from each one of your shifts and really encourage and bring it into the community education that we do, regardless of sector, across our dementia-friendly and inclusive community efforts. And so I know I'm excited to make the Strength Shifts framework a tool that I hope that our community groups here in Nevada will utilize, and that I think that we can really build into a foundation of dementia-friendly and inclusive community work more broadly too. But I just wanted to express my gratitude, and know that we here at Dementia Friendly Nevada will be actively considering that first question about what would it take to bring that lens into our context across the state.
Thank you, Casey. I'm really curious to know the last question, what people's thoughts are. What's the hardest part of this shift in your experience? If looking at all of those 5 shifts in the framework, what might be the hardest to do or to bring to life?
Put a little food for thought in the chat box there. But I mean, let's be honest, there is an ever-growing tragedy narrative that's funded, pretty significantly by big pharma. And so there's a related pill paradigm that goes along with that tragedy narrative that is on television, at least in the United States. We are subject to advertising that is just perpetuating this tragedy only narrative. And in a way that is really hard for efforts like Dementia Friendly Nevada to keep pace. We don't have the money to purchase airtime, to share messages of hope and resilience and living well and human rights. And if I did have the money, boy, I'd like to purchase airtime for Mary Beth's video. Because just put that on and let people hear a different frame and a different experience. But yeah, I mean, we're working against a giant industry here that profits from the tragedy only narrative. And I say tragedy only because as a family care partner and professional, I know it's hard. I'm not gonna, I know, and I know that you both know and are not painting dementia with just what is it, with a rosy brush here. But that we choose hope. You choose hope. We choose to focus on the strengths. We choose our attitude. We choose to live well, sometimes in the face of incredible challenges. But yeah, what do you how are communities able to amplify messages of hope in ways that can kind of, I guess, keep pace with these well-funded messages of tragic loss and behaviors?
Kenneth, did you want to say something? Or Michaela, I see you both came off mute.
I wanted to say the hardest part I've noticed is that, like, the change, even working with people or being a caregiver, is like each week can be different. So you have to adjust to that new person, new change that they have progressed to. And so instead of sticking to what they were even a month ago, just making that change with them.
Yeah, thank you.
Not sure who said that, but that was really well said. And one of the things my partner, she faces is just something as simple as, what's for dinner? And dinner, depending on my palate at that very moment in time, can instantly change. So what, she might have prepared for dinner at the beginning of the day, I've now changed and I don't want it. And it can happen that quickly. So it's not necessarily, it takes months. It can happen on the spot. And I bet that's really stressful. I bet that is.
Yeah, and Yvonne,
So
thank you, Mary Beth. And thank you, Kayla, for sharing that. I see Yvonne has the hand up. Yvonne?
Yes, Jessica, thank you. I am one of the people, I know Casey and Jennifer, I get to participate in their dementia conversations every week. And I have Huntington's disease, which means, for people who may not know what it is, it's like Alzheimer's and ALS and Parkinson's and Lewy body, you name a disease, it has some commonality with those. So I'm speaking from that lens. And I think the presentation's been outstanding. I just want to say something that I try to do is I do have opportunities with some other groups to meet with some of pharma and give them the perspective of me being a patient and my husband being my care navigator. So and they also, some of the companies, pharmaceutical companies, speak at my HDSA annual convention in Phoenix this year, from the 24th to the 28th of June. So I just want to say that they are reaching out to the HD community. So there's that hope. That's what I wanted to bring up. Thank you.
Well, that's amazing. Thank you
Thanks.
for sharing that.
yes, and sorry to hear that. I just want to, when we're talking about frameworks and we're talking about giving people space. So I've been doing this now for about 14 years. And when I started to use the word dignity, very few people literally around the world had seen the word dignity that went with dementia, the two Ds. And now we're starting to see that. So obviously today we're having those dialogues of what is it for that person to have dignity in dementia. And it is about hope. And it is about getting in front of the big pharmas and here in Canada, strategically around policy. How do you get through those threads of government and agencies to present this and to say this needs to be different? Not a choice, but it needs to be, according to, as we've been speaking about, the CRPD. These are rights for people.
Yeah. And with that being said, when we get in front of people, when we change the lens ourselves and see strengths, not just deficits, we're changing the story. And it starts with all of us taking small intentional steps forward. And when we change the story, we actually change what's possible. When we see people through that lens of strength and tie it into well-being and take those small little steps forward in trying out what ways we can support well-being, it really does open the door. I know we're just past the hour, but we would love to introduce one short video by our dear friend and colleague, Mario Gregorio, who lives well with dementia in British Columbia. And he really wanted to share the value and impact of seeing people through strengths. So if I may just close us off with sharing this video by Mario.
My name is Mario Gregorio. I was diagnosed with vascular neurocognitive disorder or dementia in 2008. That's 17 years ago. At first, it was difficult to accept, but over time, I've learned that a diagnosis is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of a new journey. For me, living well with dementia means focusing on what I can do, not just on what I may lose. I've discovered strengths I didn't know I had, and I've found new possibilities in advocacy, mentoring, and connecting with others. Living with dementia is about more than challenges. It's about resilience, creativity, and hope. By seeing strengths and expanding possibilities, we can change the way the world views dementia and show that life after a diagnosis can still be meaningful and full of purpose.
Just to close, we want to thank you. Thank you all for taking the time to join us, to be so engaged. We love it when people share their thoughts and perspectives and their own lived experiences. And we know it's not easy to make those shifts, but when we do, and when it becomes part of our day-to-day practice, whether you're a professional, whether you're a person living with dementia yourself or a family care partner, it makes the world a better place for everyone. So thank you for being part of this. Feel free to reach out to us at any time. We welcome that and invite you to do so. Our emails are listed on screen. And we just want to invite you to notice one strength in someone you support and name it out loud, celebrate it, shout it from the mountaintop, let them know too that they have that strength. And yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Jessica, Mary Beth, I must say again, thank you so much for being with us here today. But more importantly, thank you for all that you do, for being the human beings that you are and showing up in this important way. And I am excited and inspired again by the way that you have found just the right words to really write the first page of this new story. And we are going to we here at Dementia Friendly Nevada, I know, are going to really pick up your call to action and see with this new lens, bring strengths into the work that we do across the state, and our work will be all the stronger because of what you have brought us today. So thank you sincerely for your time, for your expertise, for your advocacy, and for all that you do.